Welcome to Art Impact Connect 2020. We are coming to you from the McLucas house in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. My name is Rob Lubera, and my wife, Mary, and our son, John, will be your hosts for the evening. 2020 is the first year of Art Impact Connect. So how did it come about? It was a concept born 11 years ago after we purchased the McLucas house in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. The McLucas house is the sole surviving private residence designed entirely by mid-century modern architect and renowned textile designer Alexander Girard. If ever a house could be considered to have a creative spirit and promote creativity, the McLucas house does. The first year after purchasing the McLucas house, we began hosting an annual art party. The party focused on art, music, and great food, and featured a different artist each year. The art showcased at the party has included pastels, oils, fashion, metal sculpture, dance, figurative sculpture, photography, drawings, and pop art. The party's purpose was simple: to bring together people of all backgrounds and to immerse them in art, music, food, and drink. Many friendships have been made over the years. We intended to host the party again in 2020, but the pandemic had other plans. Thankfully, we were introduced to Chuck Duquette of Collected Detroit Gallery and to renowned painter and sculptor Artis Lane. So instead of canceling the party, we decided to enhance the experience and started meeting with a small but dedicated team to create a day-long event that would include virtual presentations in the afternoon about topics in art and a virtual party in the evening celebrating the career of Artis Lane. The event would be called Art Impact Connect. The name is significant as it signifies the synergy between art in all of its forms, its impact culturally, socially, or emotionally, and its ability to connect people of all backgrounds. We want Art Impact Connect to be an event to inspire. We hope you have had a chance to watch some of the amazing afternoon presentations by Lark Mason, Sarah McDaniel, Kevin Riddell, Isabel Weiss, Dr. Hubert Massey, Leah Massey, and Deborah Lubera Kawsky.
Now we are starting our main event. We have a full evening planned, but it's going to be fast-paced.
Then we are going to hear a piano and violin duet to start off the evening's fun.
Then we're going to head down to 2 James Spirits on Michigan Avenue in Corktown to make some cocktails. After 2 James Spirits, we will travel to Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, to hear art historian Deborah Lubera Kawsky provide an overview on the art and life of Artis Lane.
Then we will travel to Collected Detroit Gallery in Detroit to watch a virtual gallery tour of Artis Lane's exhibition filmed by Saarinen.
Finally, we'll travel back to the McLucas house and keep the party going while listening to an amazing jazz performance by the Straight Ahead Trio.
Before we get started, we want to say a few thank yous.
Thank you to everyone who has supported us by participating in this event.
Thank you to Artis Lane and certainly Chuck Duquette of Collected Detroit Gallery.
And thank you to all the presenters and to the small but dedicated team who helped plan this event, namely Chuck Duquette, Deborah Lubera Kawsky, Jesse Ogden, Kevin Riddell, and Eric Saarinen.
Now let's get this party started!
Okay, to start off, I'd like to introduce my father, Dr. Richard Lubera, and our close family friend, Kathy Donegan. They will be performing 2 pieces for your enjoyment. They have performed at each of the 10 years that we have hosted our annual art party, and they are so happy to be part of this year's Art Impact Connect.
Kathy and I are very happy to be part of this year's Art Impact Connect. We're going to play 2 songs, and the first one is called All the Things You Are by Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein. Kathy and I are going to play the second song now called If I Had You by Ted Shapiro.
I like that too. It sounded so amazing.
We are now going to 2 James Spirits for some cocktails. If you have the ingredients, please get them ready. So let's head to Michigan Avenue in Corktown.
Hi, my name is Ben Sensini. I'm with 2 James Spirits, and we're happy to be a part of Art Impact Connect. And we're here celebrating Artis Lane's impact in the art community. And today we're going to be making the Painkiller, which is a very tropical drink. So we're going to start with our Jamaican rum, which is a Dr. Bird. Just going to 2 ounces of that. Add some citrus with the orange. And then some pineapple juice. And top it off with some coconut cream. Top it off with some nutmeg. Here. We have another style of cocktail kit to go, and that's the old school old fashioned. So this is for more of a person that likes to drink the intense flavor of whiskeys and stuff like that. You're going to start with 2 cherries and a sugar cube. Going to add some bitters to it, some classic style bitters, about 4 to 5 dashes. Give it all a good muddle. And then you just put a little dash of water in there just to get it all aerated. And then we're going to use our Catcher's Rye whiskey. It's 100% Michigan rye. We actually get all of our rye out in Dexter, located at Wing Farms, where we have our barrel house as well. We're storing about 1,000 barrels there right now. So you're going to give it a stir. And last but not least, take an orange. There you go, the old fashioned.
Wow, thank you to James, that was fantastic. Now we're off to Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan to hear Deborah Lubera Kawsky provide an overview of Artis Lane's life and work.
Hello, I'm art historian Deborah Lubera Kawsky. Coming up next is my presentation on the life and art of Artis Lane, given at the Cranbrook Art Museum.
Welcome to Cranbrook Art Museum. I'm Andrew Blauvelt, the director. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Deborah Lubera Kawsky. Deborah is a friend of Cranbrook, having helped us with previous exhibitions, such as those on the lives and careers of Alexander Gerard and Ruth Adler Schnee. Both of these legendary figures were deeply connected to both Cranbrook and Detroit. Today's subject, Artis Lane, occupies the same dual connections to both Cranbrook and Detroit, and Debbie will illuminate upon that in her talk. Like Adler Schnee, Miss Lane is included in a forthcoming exhibition and publication on the history of Cranbrook Academy of Art entitled With Eyes Opened, which opens next summer in June of 2021. That project seeks to expand and diversify Cranbrook's canon of distinguished artists, architects, and designers. Miss Lane is an important addition to this impressive pantheon, and we are delighted to host today's talk. Deborah Lubera Kawsky completed her undergraduate studies at Smith College and her Ph.D. in art history at Princeton University. She is an adjunct associate professor of art history at Madonna University, where she is actively involved in community outreach projects in Metro Detroit. As a board member of Docomomo, Michigan, she has coordinated events relating to Detroit art, architecture, and urbanism, including events on Minoru Yamasaki and the legacy of Detroit's Black architects. Dr. Kawsky's book, Alexander Gerard, Architect, Creating Mid-Century Modern Architecture, is published by Wayne State University Press in 2018 and is the first study of Gerard's architectural works in Detroit. Her current projects relate to the art and life of painter and sculptor Artis Lane. Please help me welcome Deborah Lubera Kawsky.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thanks to everyone at the Cranbrook Art Museum who made it possible to film this presentation here at Cranbrook, Artis Lane's alma mater. Of course, my deepest thanks go to Artis Lane, her daughter Carol McCoo, and her niece Leslie Brown for facilitating the interviews that offered me the rare opportunity, one that I will always treasure, to glimpse the woman behind the art. Artis, your talent, humility, faith, and unwavering resolve in the face of adversity is a guiding light for me and for us all. Let me introduce the life and art of Artis Lane with a brief but telling story. Artis Shreve Lane has always been guided by a higher power. Indeed, Artis traces her mission in life back to an epiphany she had at the age of 5 while living in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She had wandered across the street from her home to a deserted field that held the remains of a machine tool company. Immersed in a sea of wildflowers much taller than herself, Lane recalls not fear, but inspiration by the wonderment of nature, a feeling that she understood the secrets of the universe. But when she ran home to tell her mother, she discovered that she didn't have the words to describe her experience. Only years later would she explain, quote, "God created us all for a purpose. I knew I was going to be an artist," unquote. Indeed, throughout her 7+ decade career, Artis Lane has always preferred to let her art speak for her. Lane's work encompasses an awe-inspiring range of media and themes, from oil and pastel portraits to monumental bronze sculptures celebrating social justice pioneers and deep metaphysical topics. And she is still working at the age of 93. My presentation will provide an overview of the life and career of Artis Lane, structured in 3 parts corresponding with the 3 primary chronological periods of her career. Part 1, Becoming, covers the foundational part of her career, beginning with her ancestry and early life, and her studies as an artist in Canada and Detroit between the years 1927 to 62. Part 2, Arriving, covers the period between 1962 and the late 1980s, in which artist established herself as a leading portraitist in New York and Los Angeles, and made artistic statements on social justice issues. Part 3, Emerging, deals with the current phase of Artis's career, from circa 1990 to the present, in which she focuses primarily on the medium of bronze sculpture and on metaphysical topics. And as we will see, Artis Lane views the entire creative process as a metaphor for the larger journey of life, not only her life, but that of humanity as a whole. So let's move on to part 1. Artis Lane still recalls her first sculpture, formed from the thick mud near the stream by her grandparents' home, saying, quote, "My grandmother, Mary Shadd, had only one toy for us to play with, a cloth doll with porcelain hands and feet." Artis, then 7 years old, made her own clay figure inspired by the doll. She adds, "No one told me, but I instinctively knew to put my creations under the shade of the porch so that they would dry slowly and not crack in the sun." One could say that the life and art of Artis Lane was shaped by her early experiences in Canada and in Michigan. She was born Artis Marie Shreve on May 14, 1927, near the rural village of North Buxton in Ontario, Canada, known as a haven for fugitive slaves and free people of color. Looking back to her birth, Lane sees the name Artis bestowed by her mother as prophetic of her future career. Yet this destiny was equally shaped by her family's history of social and political activism, going back to abolitionist Abraham Shadd and his daughter, Lane's great-great-aunt, Mary Ann Shadd Carey, who was the first female newspaper editor in North America. As a child, Artis recalls sitting amidst the town elders at the feet of her grandfather, Garrison Shadd, who, when asked about her presence, stated, "She's an artist. She needs to know about the world." Given this heritage, it's significant that Lane's first sculptures were created near the home of her maternal grandparents, and that she would later celebrate the achievements of civil rights heroines like her own ancestor, Shadd Carey, whom we see at the far left, through sculpture. Artis received a progressive education in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the family moved when she was 5 years old. After the family moved back to Canada, her prodigious talent was recognized by family and friends and cultivated by art teachers Marie Campbell, who we see in the back here of this image from North Buxton Elementary School, Ms. Hall, and Alice McCoig. And of course, Artis's parents at top left. Artis views a 1941 self-portrait drawing as an early step in, quote, her journey to find her true self beyond the material, unquote. In it, the artist discerns her 14-year-old self in double, as reflected in the full-length mirror in the family's living room and in the sketch on her drawing board. Her expression, accentuated by an upturned brow and illuminated by an unseen light, captures a precocious resolve. Indeed, while Artis had already faced bigotry in her life, she was clearly determined to rise above it, which was her mantra at the time, and succeed in the art world. In 1942, 15-year-old Artis won the Dominion of Canada Award, followed in 1946 by an Edith Chapman 4-year scholarship, which facilitated her studies at the Ontario College of Art in Toronto. There she painted murals and portraits to supplement her scholarship money. Artis was dedicated to her career, stating, quote, "I don't intend to marry ever. I will devote my whole life to art." However, her life changed course in 1949 when she met and married journalist Bill Lane, prompting a move from Toronto to Detroit. Daughter Carol was born the following year. In the fall of 1951, Lane began her studies at the Cranbrook Art Academy in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and she is referenced right here as studying painting with Wallace Mitchell. She describes this period as tumultuous due to the initial acceptance of her portfolio, but subsequent rejection of her admission. She was admitted to Cranbrook following intervention from the Urban League of Detroit. However, Artis recalls inspiring words from then Art Academy director Zoltan Zepeshi, who encouraged her to continue her studies in fine arts. After her divorce in the mid-1950s, Artis turned to portraiture to support herself and her young daughter, whom we see in this wonderful image taken in Detroit. During this time, she scored prominent commissions from Detroit's social and political elite, including members of the Booth family, State Senator Charles Diggs, and Governor George Romney, whom we see at right. Her life changed again in 1962 after she met actress Diane Carroll, who was in Detroit to star in a new Richard Rodgers musical, No Strings. The two women bonded, and about a month later, Artis moved to New York City to start a new chapter in her life and career. For part two, I will start off with a wonderful anecdote. It was a night to remember. Artis Lane had come to Los Angeles from New York City and soon afterwards received an invitation from screen legend Cary Grant. Artis had painted a portrait of Grant, and he wanted to see it. His response was surprising. Artis recalls, he slid gracefully down to the ground and turned the painting upside down. It's the work at left. Upside down, asking not about the likeness, but about my technique, how I had achieved such deep and rich translucent colors. The move marked the beginning of a long friendship and the ascent of Artis's career as a portraitist, which had begun during her time in Detroit, but continued during her time in New York City in the early 1960s. And here's a portrait of her friend Diane Carroll. Here's a promo from No Strings. In New York City, Lane was associated with the elite agency Portraits Incorporated, and completed portraits of prominent public figures, including Jackie Kennedy and the owners of the New York Times. However, she was inspired then and now by the example of civil rights activist Mary Cloud Bethune, who spoke of the responsibility of being the first one of color in every field. And at that time, Lane was really the first black woman, the sole black woman in the field of portraiture. Later in her career, Artis would sculpt a bronze bust of Bethune. By 1964, Artis had moved to California, reuniting there with her daughter Carol. In the same year, she met actor, manager, producer Vince Cannon, whom we see at left, who would serve as her life partner and manager until his death in 1998. Vince's supportive role in Artis's life and career is evident in a 1982 bronze Release, which we see at right, which shows a man both supporting yet releasing a woman who stands in a pose of perfect balance, a rare feminist interpretation of Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, which she would explore more fully in a later bronze, which we see at center. With Canon's help, Lane developed a reputation as the celebrity portrait painter in Los Angeles. Her subjects included Hollywood screen stars such as Diane Cannon, whom we see at left, Barbara Stanwyck, and Charlton Heston, as well as figures from the world of society, art, business, and politics. At right, we see Baby Jane Holzer, the edgy socialite turned model who was Andy Warhol's It Girl. Lane also did portraits of Claire Booth Luce, Mr. and Mrs. Walter Annenberg, and we see Lee Annenberg with Artis on the left, and Barbara Bush on the right. These were completed for the National Art Association's annual event dubbed the Orchid Ball, and Lane recalls that Halston designed a dress for her every year. However, while she has often been characterized as a painter to the stars, Artis rejects that title. Instead, she attributes her success in portraiture to her fine arts training, her sensitivity of line, color, and design, and to her innate ability to capture, quote, the life spark, unquote, in her sitters. In fact, when I recently asked her how long it takes to complete a portrait, Artis responded, quote, all my life plus a few intense hours, unquote. The comment demonstrates Lane's rare combination of talent, training, and intuition. And I think we see a prime example at right in the 1971 portrait of fine art and fashion photographer Douglas Dubler. So this is Douglas Dubler on the right. This is a portrait of Artis and Vince that was shot by Douglas Dubler right around the same time. Artis recalls that Dubler's energy filled the room and that she captures it like prey, she jokes, quickly yet vividly on paper. Key to her success is a secret technique used first in her portrait of Diane Carroll, which we see at left, and this is Suzanne Kay. She first articulates the structure and depth of the figure through strokes of Damar varnish tinted with burned umber, before adding strokes of pastel on top. Lane explains that the gray beige of the paper serves as the midtone, which you can see running through Dubler's head and body, contrasting with the highlights in white pastel and the darker, deeper areas of varnish, making the image truly pop and come alive. And I think it really does seem very vividly alive. Beginning in the 1980s, artists used portraiture to celebrate social justice heroines like friend Rosa Parks. Artists had met and immediately bonded with Parks back in Detroit in the late 1950s. Her first tribute was a painting entitled The Beginning, which we see at the left and we see a detail at right. Here Lane portrays Parks as she knew her, a humble woman who defied racist policies with an everyday action of extraordinary courage. While the composition is based on a famous photograph, Lane's depiction is striking. The warm brown tones of Parks' skin set her apart from the monochrome tonality of the bus and the ghostly image of the lone white man in the seat behind her. Park glances out at and beyond the bus towards three images, and you can just barely see them here: a church, a school, and an American flag, symbolizing her love of God and country. A few years later, Park sat for a bronze bust, which was installed in 1991 in the Smithsonian Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. At left is the maquette for another Parks portrait, this one showing her ascending the steps of the Montgomery, Alabama courthouse. I'm showing you a couple of details on screen, which I believe provide an insight into her sculptural process. It begins when she creates a clay model of the subject, which is then sent to the foundry to be cast in bronze. But in these details, I think you can clearly see the marks of Lane's modeling tools, especially in the face of Parks here. But more importantly, the imprint of her fingertips on the surface of the cast bronze. In this slide, I show an image of Artis Lane at work. In 2009, Lane created bronze busts of two prominent women's rights activists, ancestor Mary Ann Shadd Cary, and this one is installed in her birthplace of North Buxton, Ontario, and Sojourner Truth. The latter being the first sculpture honoring an African American woman to be placed in the U.S. Capitol. And you can see that she was celebrated at the time by Michelle Obama. Throughout the next decades of her career, bronze sculpture on a new monumental scale would become Lane's medium of choice. I will begin part 3 as well with a small anecdote. Artis Lane does not believe in accidents. Beginning in 1990, she had begun to focus less on painting portraits and more on creating bronze sculptures. She had arrived at the foundry one day expecting to pick up a finished bronze. However, she was surprised to discover her work, the head of a woman, in mid-process. The hard ceramic shell was only partially broken away from the cooled bronze, revealing just a glimmer of the figure beneath. For Lane, the experience was a revelation. The unfinished sculpture was a visual metaphor for a deeper spiritual truth, one rooted both in her civil rights imagery and in her Christian Science beliefs. As she stated, quote, "My civil rights images led me naturally to ideas about what and who we are outside of race. I went from there to my most important body of work, the metaphysical images of man emerging out of the ignorance of material concepts and evolving into spiritual awareness." Inspired by her foundry experience, Lane transformed both her technical and her conceptual approach to sculpture. In this piece, aptly entitled Breakthrough, she deliberately incorporated the vestiges of the casting process into her work, as you see right here. These include the hard ceramic shell, which is usually broken, removed, and smoothed away during the finishing stages at the foundry. Lane's process is an instinctive one in which she makes, quote, "artistic decisions at every turn, deciding what to leave," unquote. The resulting rough surface has been compared with that of archaeological artifacts and ancient sculptures. However, for Lane, this transformational look is ultimately metaphysical in Lane. And in fact, she sees what she calls these emerging figures as a visual symbol for the idea that life, experience, really all of reality, is in a continual state of evolution. And we see it here, but beginning with Breakthrough, Lane conceived this very innovative idea of pairing what she calls an emerging figure with the casting material intact, with a more finished variation in which the casting material has been stripped off and the bronze has been coated with a patina. In her birth series, we see 3 variations of the same figure, allowing a glimpse both into the stages of the bronze casting process and into the artist's creative process, which is itself like a birth. So here we see 2 finished bronzes with different patina, and here we see one of these emerging figures. And in this case, if we look at the detail on the right, we can see clearly attached not only the vestiges of the casting process, which we see here, but also, and we'll see this better in the next image, which is a view from above, still attached is the sprue, the channel through which the liquid bronze enters the mold. And here's a wonderful aerial view. However, for Lane, the ultimate source of inspiration was spiritual. Mary Baker Eddy's Science and Health, a text which had guided her adult life for decades. These spiritual principles took center stage in Lane's sculpture series, Emerging into Spirit, exhibited in 2011, as we see at left, at the Forest Lawn Museum in Glendale, California, and more recently at right in the Collected Detroit Gallery. The series shows the stages in man's journey from matter to spirit, embodied in 6 male sculptures. Here again, medium merges with message. The series begins, and it begins at the bottom, and the figures ascend towards the top, and we see that on both sides. The series begins with Rebirth from Matter, in which we see a darkly patinated bronze figure of a man who rises from death, drawn upwards seemingly by the power of God. The series progresses with emerging first man. So rebirth from matter is here, and there are several stages. I'm not covering all of them, but emerging first man is here. Emerging first man stands erect but gazes upwards, inspired to shed the trappings of his mortal material self, manifested by the casting material that clings to his body. While the figure of emerging man was conceived as part of this series, Lane has also created individual and, as you can see in the figure, the photo on the left, monumental statues of the emerging first man. The first, standing over 12 feet tall, was created for a private garden complex in Atlanta, Georgia. And the artist is currently at work on a similarly monumental figure for a sculpture park. The series culminates with the figure of spiritual man, and this would be the figure at the very top, and we see the figure at right and a detail at center, whose transparent kaolinite medium and pose of perfect balance symbolizes the full realization of man in the spirit. Significantly, the artist used an African model to represent her generic man, which counters the traditional Eurocentric bias in art and reflects instead the scientific reality of mankind's origins as a species in Africa. Lane documented her own spiritual transformation in what she calls a vertical triptych of self-portraits. And you see the triptych at left, and we see a detail at right of the upper image in the triptych. So again, she's moving, as in the Emerging into Spirit series, she's moving from darkness into light. And the one at the top she dubs her spiritual self-portrait. Here, Lane's artistic journey comes full circle. The metaphysical musings inherent already in her 1941 self-portrait are here more overtly expressed. As before, the artist casts a discerning glance at the viewer, but here she inhabits a seemingly otherworldly space. She is stripped of her artistic paraphernalia, and her face is bisected by a series of lines articulated in rainbow colors of ink and watercolor. Only one eye is fully represented, reflecting the biblical passage, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." This is my true spiritual self, the artist seems to say. In my conclusion, I will go back in time to an artwork done by artists in the 1980s, one which I believe demonstrates her relevance today as a pioneer in speaking out on social justice issues. It was a painful but perhaps not unexpected moment. In July of 1986, Artis Lane was one of 12 artists who had been asked by the Statue of Liberty Foundation to create images of the statue to mark its 100th anniversary. Her work, entitled "Tear on the Face of America," was unique in that it featured a young black boy enveloped by an American flag, but with a prominent tear rolling down his cheek. The foundation responded that it would accept the painting, provided that Lane replaced the tear on the boy's face with a smile. Lane refused, explaining that her image, with the tear intact, expressed the continued need for the statue to represent both the conscience and the promise of America, that is, liberty and equal opportunity for all. Of course, Lane's image and message is incredibly relevant today as people across America and the world come together to demand that the freedoms embodied in the statue be fulfilled. And I'm showing you at left a drone shot of Hubert Massey's recent Power to the People mural that's literally painted on the streets of Detroit. And at right is a sketch that I came across in Artis's apartment, of course, representing John Lewis, whom she had met, and who has sadly recently passed away. And I fervently hope that this will someday become a bronze bust. Lane once stated that discrimination can either devaluate you or give you the impetus to speak. And indeed, despite facing the twin obstacles of race and gender throughout her career, Artis Lane has spoken and continues to speak through her art. and true to the God-given mission that she first perceived as a child and expressed in artworks like the Emerging into Spirit series, it is a message intended to educate and inspire mankind. As Lane once stated, quote, "The journey of growth from matter into spirit is universal, non-racial, non-divisive. We all need to be on the path together." Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on the life and art of Artis Lane. Thank you again to Artis and her family for facilitating my research. Artis, you are a true inspiration to me and to us all.
Thank you, Debbie. Your overview on the life and career of Artis Lane will make the virtual gallery film much more meaningful. We're now headed down to the Collected Detroit Gallery in Detroit, Michigan.
As an artist, I felt I want to say something, to leave a message that would uplift others. These were just done with one sitting of the model, so it was rapidly done. And thick paint let it stay fresh, the flow of it. Oh, and I used to seat my models behind, in front of a mirror. And then I found myself splattering like Jackson Pollock after. It seemed, you can feel that the artist can feel when it's finished. It has to do with the heart and the soul that brings joy, not intellectual understanding as much as it's like an enlightenment. I admired the work of Matisse over Picasso, who was really male chauvinist. This I did of Diane Carroll. She was doing a play called No Strings. I went backstage and met her, and she said, "What are you doing in Detroit? You belong in New York." I found a place half a block away from her, and there I was in the city of New York as an artist. New York is, at that time, it was the city for artists. We owned it. I just felt so relaxed there because there was an importance given to visual artists. I also did this in all bronze, that stone and marble and bronze. I love mixing textures. Without any of my own striving, word of mouth was that Artis Lane was the one to have your portrait done by. So many portraits of well-known socialites. The Maloof sisters, every year for 8 years, would have me do a portrait. Mrs. Bush Sr., Barbara. I didn't think much of her husband, but I did love her earthiness and honesty. Years ago, I met Rosa Parks, and I'm expecting a big woman with a booming voice or whatever, not knowing her history as thoroughly as I do now. We met and we was just bonded. It was wonderful. But the whole experience of meeting someone who you take to just very naturally like a sister. I'm used to sisters, so it was very wonderful. I had done the painting called The Beginning of Mrs. Parks on the bus. And in the window, I did just a secret sketch of a church, a flag, and a school. Her love of her country, her volunteering, and she signed every one. She's the most humble woman in the sense that it wasn't signed for the reason of I am important person. That had to do with her, the cause behind. She was a very proper lady. She a tailor. She did her own clothing, always well dressed. Notice the detail. I've never done that before. We went to the Crystal Cathedral with her. She had wanted to see that, and Everyone stood up, but she being shorter, like I am, you couldn't find her in the crowd. It was delightful. I did this portrait of her that she sat for. Profile of her, the U.S. Mint had wanted an image of her. Instead, the U.S. Mint forged my name on the coin and used their in-house artist who destroyed the image. It looks like an angry Native American male. She was known for that sweet, soft smile. She never cussed. She never expressed anger. She knew that her cause was true to God's loving way. And we became like girlfriends in all respect to her life, apart from the history that she caused. And we've traveled together and had wonderful moments. It seemed like there was never on plane rides, there was never turbulence or whatever. It just seemed like God was with her at all times. Not ashamed to say, but saddened to say that racism has become like no other country. It's become the disgrace. What could I as an artist do to express equal respect and love for all beings? That whole idea of presenting a serious subject in a light way. Every Thanksgiving, we would go to Sidney Poitier and Joanna's home, and in walks Jaimin Onsu, and Sidney Poitier met him. He's a very muscular man. At one time he was a boxer, I think, before acting. He did the Amistad movie, and Herb Ritz had been getting $25,000 for photographs he did of Jaimin with an octopus on top of his head, and Jaimin hated that because it was as if he was just being used. I began with mankind, totally immersed in sin and darkness and the power of God, the truth, moving him up, up, up. And then that whole evolving, leaving the shell on, it indicates a stage of advanced understanding. And then the being balanced on one leg is a shepherd watching over the sheep, and he would stand with the leg, take turns, I'm sure, with this all day long, day and night. This was a thought that came to me as I was in the foundry, expecting to pick up a piece, and the shell and the wiring was still on the figure, just the head, parts of the head showing. So I use that as a symbol of developing higher and higher spirituality, and to this figure here, the invisible qualities of man, not the bodily so much as the mind and heart. So this is the first handmade paper from the Irish leaf. We boiled it in water and laid over the bronze. In creating this image of the pregnant woman celebrating the life within her, I wanted to use the most fragile kind of paper, lay it flat in the sun to dry, and let it take on the form of the bronze beneath it. It's the most precious piece I've ever done. The whole Expressionist period brought about that urge to use color and movement. I love the female nudes, the freedom. Most artists do not make it, the head is not a portrait. Mine include the whole character, the mood of the model. It isn't just the pose. I chose the 3 different racial tones, skin tones, the black, the brown, and the white, just as a subject to keep the flow in one painting. So much movement in it. It has, I love watercolors, the colors, the washes, and it's such a feminine. Also, that profile is so abstracted, the head. I love the closer you can get into it and see. Oh, I always used to pre-wash the paper. It gives it sort of a canvas texture. This woman, she was the daughter of a well-known gallery owner. For some reason, she posed, felt that her mother would be just horrified that she posed nude. This exhibition that deals with so many stages of my life and work. This is the maquette for the Sojourner Truth sculpture that's in the permanent collection of the White House. That she was a very enterprising woman, was born a slave, but that IQ, the intelligence factor was there. There's a design for it when she said, I've worked as hard as any man, but ain't I a woman? Sojourner Truth was over 6 feet tall, and there's a photograph of her with President Lincoln even. Body language is so important to me, regardless of any language barrier. It's a universal receptivity to what that body is saying. There's a proud lift, and then the hands on the hips and then that taking the first step. The Vitruvian woman. The whole idea of a male perfected within that square. So there's always those women who acknowledge and are aware of God and gratitude and joy. It's like a flight thing, so the body language of soaring into a higher realm of spirituality. All of my work is based biblically. The whole racist concept, the mortal thought, there was no validity to it. It had nothing to do with our true being created in God's image. God is not a giant man and a bearded up in the higher atmosphere. I was born in 1927, 93 years, and we don't count considering eternal life metaphysically. The Bible always speaks of man, but it includes woman. God is ever present, God is all. He gave His only begotten Son to come and teach us who we really are as a true, beloved, equally beloved child of God.
Good evening, everyone. We're so glad to be here with you this evening. You are listening to the music of the Straight Ahead Trio. I'd like to introduce these wonderful musicians who are playing for you this evening. I will start on my far left. We have the very wonderful Miss Galen McKinney on the drums.
Hello, 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 hello.
Right in the center, this very beautiful woman who's also an extremely accomplished musician, composer, recording artist, arranger, etc., etc. Let's hear it for your bassist, Miss Marion Hayden. We're getting some finger snaps. That's what we get these days. It's all good. It's all good because we are connected. Before I introduce myself, I'll say that connection is important because we are here to present a very wonderful art exhibit for you by the great Artis Lane, and she is being presented by a group that's entitled Art, Impact, and Connect. So we are here to connect with you this evening. My name is Alina Moore. Thank you very much. And we have some more music for you. We will continue with a little lap music, and no matter where you are, you can still get up and get your groove on. This is a really nice little cha-cha-cha, pagosal. 3, 4.
A mí me gusta este ritmo, si tú lo quieres, ven conmigo. Así se toca este ritmo, si tú lo quieres, a bailar cha-cha-cha. Este ritmo, si tú lo quieres, ven conmigo. Toca este ritmo, si tú lo quieres, a bailar cha-cha-cha. Que para cha cha cha, que bueno pa' vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Que el pito es sabroso, ella quiero vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Para cha cha cha, que rico pa' vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Que el pito es sabroso, ella quiere vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Que para cha cha cha, que rico pa' vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Este ritmo es sabroso, quiero vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Que para cha cha cha, que rico pa' vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Que para cha cha cha, que bueno pa' vacilar. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Busco tu pareja, bailame cha cha cha. A mí me gusta este ritmo. Mi boy, mi boy, mi boy, mi boy. Pa' que sepa. This next tune that we're going to do is a composition of mine, and it is called Joy. I hope it brings you that too.
Well, the purpose of this wonderful event is to connect through the arts. So we've got a little something for you on that theme.
flecha.
truly has been our pleasure to be with you this evening. We hope you enjoyed the art, and we hope that you enjoyed us. We are straight ahead. On the piano, please give it up for Miss Alina Moore on the piano. And on the bass, please give it up for my rhythm sister, Miss Marion Hayden on the bass. Yours truly, my name is Gaylen McKinney. I'm your drummer. We'd like to thank Art Impact Connect for having us perform for this lovely art show today. It's lovely out here. I hope you saw it all. We thank you very much for your time and for hanging out with us. We'll see you again in the near future.